Hey folks, how's it going? Hoping your spring breaks were excellent. I am posting this today, and we are going to spend a little bit of time, hopefully 15 or so minutes, talking about our next assignment, which you have been introduced to in this past week 7 folder, and that is the set of instructions you are going to write for this class. So this mini lecture is going to be based entirely around explaining the process of writing instructions and writing really good instructions. I will say quickly that I've been really impressed with the level of writing that I've seen so far from each of you, the consistency and the timeliness of submitting your assignments and really getting everything up to a pretty high level. So I look forward to reading your instructions, and I know that, well, I suspect and believe that they will be of a relatively high quality. So looking forward to that. Okay, so let's jump right in here. So this mini lecture is going to cover the instruction assignment. So you've seen the assignment sheet posted for that in the week 7 folder. So make sure to take a look at that if you haven't already. And so for this week 8, I'm going to have you read a set of sample instructions and do a kind of reflection on that sample instructions and sort of be thinking about how that's working. What sort of specific details that stand out to you about that set of instructions on cold brew coffee maker, and sort of get you accustomed to the kind of language, processes, and information that you will find in a good detailed set of instructions. So let me say this up front quickly for your own instructions that I expect them to be relatively complex, and by that I mean that they should be sophisticated, detailed, and include multiple steps that have pretty complex information and certainly plenty of showing and telling for your readers so that they really get a good sense of the set of instructions you're putting forward for them. And so something that actually wouldn't fly in this kind of assignment is a set of instructions for a paper airplane, no pun intended. But something like that is just too simple to really take a lot of detail, time, and thought to make it into a really complex and important informational set of instructions. So what you choose for your instructions is ultimately up to you. And if you're concerned about picking something that may be too simple or even may be too complex, you should let me know. Because we are actually going to, or you're going to, I'm going to have you do a usability test with these instructions and have someone actually do them. So you're going to provide them the tools, the materials, the equipment, and the actual instructions, and they're going to have to complete the procedure. You're going to help see what's going on with them, whether they're struggling, whether they're succeeding, and you have a chance to intervene in their work and sort of help work with them, but also craft your instructions so that they'll be better for the next person that's going to do them. So we're going to do this during week 9, that's next week. So having your instructions in a really good shape for that week, even though I'm not going to collect them until then, is absolutely vital because it will give you a sense to how you're doing with your instructions and how they're faring in the real world. Okay, so I want to talk about 3 aspects of instructional writing that you must deal with as you're writing your own instructions. So I'll say them quickly first. The number 1 is setting the stage. 2 is coaching, and 3 is alerting. So those are the 3 sort of processes that I'm going to walk through a little bit today. And if you've looked in week 7, you'll also see a sort of written, shorter version of what I'm going to talk about here today. But let's jump right into it. So setting the stage. So this is the first aspect of instructional writing that you're going to have to deal with. And this this part of the instructions is going to help prepare the reader or user to be successful right up front. So that means providing the materials list. That may be the tools, the equipment, the ingredients if you're making your recipe, the safety mechanisms and procedures that this instructions require, right? And more than that, you're going to have to make sure that this list of materials, tools, whatever they may be, are ultra specific. And so by that I mean, let's say you're explaining how to make a homemade loaf of bread, and you want your reader to be able to go and find a specific type of flour. I mean, assume that they've never made this type of bread before, and you have the wisdom and knowledge to explain to them what kind of materials they will need. And so if they should be able to walk into Hannaford with your instructions and pick out the exact type of flour or yeast that is required for this recipe, right? So as you are designing your materials list and choosing the equipment and materials and tools or ingredients that must be used, be very specific. You know the information that you want to impart to your reader, and it's just a matter of being able to explain that or present that in the most effective, optimal way. Setting the stage also means actually setting the stage. So that may include telling your reader that they have to have a flat surface to work on, or an angled surface if they're drawing, right? Or if they're changing the oil in their vehicle, they're going to need a piece of cardboard or a piece of or a dolly to sit on when they go underneath the vehicle, right? They may need a specific kind of lighting. So let's say you're working under a vehicle, you will have to have some kind of lighting that either comes out over the engine or goes underneath the vehicle with the reader and user. You have to make sure that your reader is set up right up front in the materials list or right up front in the instructions to be successful immediately, right? So you don't want to leave anything out, and you want to be as specific as possible, not only in this aspect, the setting the stage aspect, but throughout the entire set of instructions. Another aspect you want to include is the level of skill that's required to do this kind of procedure, right? So, you know, changing the oil on a vehicle is requires a much different skill level than changing the water pump, right? Or, it may be more related to changing the battery, right? It's a relatively simple procedure that requires just a small list of tools and a bit of know-how. But there's different skill levels depending on the kinds of work or instructions you're preparing your reader for. So make sure that you're honest up front about how successful your reader may be or what kind of skills they will need in order to achieve this set of instructions successfully. Another aspect you want to include is the amount of time it's going to take. How long is it going to take me to do this, right? So this may mean you have to time yourself doing it, or you have to sort of make a really educated, specific guess as to how long this procedure will take, right? Ultimately, you want to set up the right person in the right place with the right stuff to do the right job, right? And so that's the sort of goal of the instructions. And setting the stage, those first preliminary steps and procedures and lists are absolutely required in order for your reader user to be successful. So the next step, and that jumps right out of setting the stage, is being able to coach your reader, and that's providing a step-by-step guide for the reader so that they may complete the process successfully. And that doesn't just mean telling someone to do something, right? That also that what I mean by coaching is taking seriously your role as the guide or steward for this set of instructions so that your reader understands the knowledge that you're imparting to them, and not only that, but understands how to make that knowledge into an action, right? And so you're explaining to them the know-how for making a homemade loaf of bread, and they may have never done this before, so you need to be ultra specific in the way that you are explaining each step, right, of the process. And for you, someone who's done this before, the steps may seem really simple. There might be only 4 steps in your mind. But as you start thinking about them and breaking down the processes for the different sub-steps or subcategories or sub-processes for this set of instructions, it becomes clear that there's much more to it than just turning the oven on and going, right, if you're making bread. So you should start by clearly numbering the steps that you are including in your instructions, and that doesn't mean just having 100 steps for a set of instructions. There has to be something more engaging about the steps you create. There should be numbers, but under each number should be very specific, detailed information that will help the reader achieve an action. And so each step should include a single action, right? So, step 1 should tell the reader what they're going to achieve in this first step and walk them through actually doing it, right? So keep it very, very specific when you're talking about the individual steps your reader has to do, because you want to make sure that they are set up correctly to do this right the first time, right? So one way of dealing with that, and this is a good way to think about the instructions overall, is that you should take the processes that you know and break them down into sub-steps, right? Segment them so that your reader can understand exactly what sub-steps they need to take in order to achieve a specific action, right? So an example, if you're jacking up a vehicle to work underneath it, you're not just jacking it up, right? So if you just say jack the vehicle up, that's not extremely helpful to your reader, right? So they don't know where to put the jack, if there's a jack point, or if they need to put it on the frame, right? Or if their jack requires something as a piece of leverage to help them actually jack the vehicle up, right? So that step also includes, putting jack stands in the appropriate place so that the vehicle is reinforced and it's not going to fall on the user, right? So you want to make sure that these specific steps are really broken down and detailed so that your reader, who may have never changed their oil or made a loaf of bread in their entire lives, really understands what this process looks like and how they can do it, right? So ultimately, you want your document to be user friendly. You want anybody who confronts it to be able to use it in a useful way, right, and not be totally confounded or confused by what's going on, right? It should be easy to navigate. Each step should contain an action and should be effectively detailed, right? There should be an explanation of the tools and materials that each step requires and how they will be used, right? One aspect that you may consider as part of your coaching job is to include images, right? And so we've talked about CRAP and about figuring out how to effectively incorporate images into text. And so this is a great opportunity to do that, right? So sometimes a picture really is worth 1,000 words. And if you put an image of, where to place the jack on a vehicle or where to place the jack stand after jacking it up, and that will be very useful for the reader to understand where exactly they need to be and what they need to do, right? So you should consider seriously using images if you feel that they are an important and useful aspect of the explanation process, right? Something else that you want to be cognizant of is providing your reader with markers of success, right? So they should be able to observe changes when they complete an action, whether that's a smell in cooking or the solid and sound click of something locking in when you're working with something technical, right? These kinds of aspects, whether they're verbal, whether they're a scent, whether they're a noise, will really help your reader alert them to when they've completed an action and when they can move on, right? And so they know that if they haven't heard that sound or smelled the yeast, then they have to sort of work a little more closely with the step that they're on before they're done with it. The language shouldn't be open for interpretation. Your reader should know exactly what they need to do. The language should be totally transparent to them, right? And that can be a challenge, right? Because to you, someone who's done this many times, this may be a process that you're very familiar with. So taking a step back and really thinking about what your reader will need to be successful at this goal or at this process is vital for this. And using language in a way that is easy to access and to understand. So this is where you're going to want to be as specific as possible, right? You want to help guide your reader through the anticipated challenges by sort of preparing them for that, and using your language in a transparent way really helps mitigate some of the confusion or challenges that they may come in contact with, right? So that's your responsibility as the coach. The final aspect, the third sort of detail that is required for instructional writing, is really alerting the reader of specific aspects or details or stages that they must know right away, right? So, part of a set of instructions is really making sure that the reader and the user stays safe throughout, right? An excellent example is jacking up your vehicle and making sure to change the oil or to work on it in any capacity. So you want to make sure that your reader understands exactly what they must do to stay safe while doing this, right? So, an example of this may be a hazard sign, a skull and crossbones, right? You're familiar with the different colors and sort of larger fonts of warning signs, right? And so if there are any in your set of instructions, you need to make sure that your reader knows them not only up front, that they know them that they know them when the time is right. So that's the two sort of details of the alerting aspect of instructional writing, is that the alert must be timely, right? It must, happen when the reader is actually either confronted with this right away or before it, right? The earlier they know of the hazards of the instruction of the process they're doing, the better, frankly, right? So timely. It also must be conspicuous, and by that I mean it must be obviously, available and seen to the reader on the set of instructions, right? So again, this may be skull and crossbones, right? This may be using different colored ink. It may be, using a kind of like you would see in the shallow end of a community pool, right? A sort of person diving in and their head bouncing off the bottom, and then there's a big no marker, right? And so don't do this, right? So you want to make sure that you're providing the proper amount of time and detail so that your reader or user knows what dangerous aspects there are to this set of instructions, right? You're required to show the reader how to overcome these, right? And so that's your job, is to make sure the reader or user stays safe throughout the entire instructional process. And using alerts throughout your set of instructions when necessary or when needed is pivotal for this, right? So those are the three sets of steps that I want you to be thinking about for your instructions as you begin drafting them, setting the stage, making sure that you have the right person in the right place at the right time with the right amount of tools to do the right job, the right time, the right way the first time, right? And so that's your responsibility right up front. Then you have to be a solid coach, a guide, a steward for your readers to make sure that they are walked through these instructions in an effective, user-friendly, and safe way, right? And then finally, making sure that your reader knows everything they need to know about the dangerous aspects of, or the must need to know information that they will that will come most in handy for them as they are completing these sets of instructions, right? So I'm looking forward to reading these. I'm excited to see what you will choose for your topics. Of course, you should let me know of any questions you have. Otherwise, I look forward to reading them. All right, folks. Talk to you soon. Bye.